Time to speak to the Conservatives. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I know you only caught the back end of that Sky report on fly tipping, but is fly tipping an area where there needs to be tougher punishments to clamp down on it?
Yeah, earlier in the year, I proposed that we increase the penalties for fly tipping, and in fact that for persistent fly tippers, we even went so far as to have a potential prison sentence as well, because there's a major problem. It's across our country, both in rural areas and in our towns and cities, and you've seen just how bad this has been. In some places, I went to Birmingham earlier in the year, even before the bin strikes happened, to see some of the fly tipping that's going on there. And it's absolutely appalling. It's wrecking neighbourhoods, destroying quality of life, and so we should be bearing down on anyone who does it, frankly, but particularly the career criminals, the persistent people who are doing this time and again and getting away with it.
What do you make of the Leveson review to try and aid the enormous court backlogs that have persisted for years now?
Well, look, the first thing to say is we've got to get a grip on this challenge, because justice delayed is justice denied. It cannot be right in our country that someone is waiting until 2028 or even 2029 now for a rape trial to commence. That is just wrong. And at the moment, the problem is actually getting worse. The court backlogs are rising by 750 cases every single month under Labour. But the proposals brought forward by Sir Brian Leveson at the behest of the government are not the right ones, by and large, as far as we're concerned. It would see people like burglars or sick individuals like stalkers getting off having served just a fifth of their sentence in prison, just 20% of their sentence if they pleaded guilty early.
Well, hold on.
And it's worse
you're
than that.
merging a number of things there, because that I imagine you're extrapolating that they would qualify for early release as well. That's got nothing to do with the sentencing.
It has. If you take together the two reports that the government's
I know, but we're
commissioned-
talking about the Leveson.
Well, the government has already accepted David Gauke's report. So if they accept Brian Leveson's report, bring the two together, it means serious criminals, like a burglar, like a thug who beats somebody up in the street, like a man who stalked a woman, if they pled guilty early, they would just serve 20% of their sentence. And if I may just make one more point, it also says, because I think it's worse than that, it also says that many offences, like shoplifters, thieves who are nicking things from stores on our high streets, like drug dealers, would get off with just an out-of-court settlement, so they wouldn't even have a criminal record at all. So all of these so-called minor crimes, which I think are really serious and are damaging people's lives and livelihoods right now, like mobile phone theft, like shoplifting, like having your van broken into and your tools stolen, people might not even be getting a criminal record for doing these things. It will just fuel all that level of criminality. So this isn't the answer. I think the answer is that we get our courts sitting more. At the moment, and Brian Leveson backs this up, there is plenty of potential for our courts to be sitting more days. He's said, let's go to 130,000 sitting days every year. That's 20,000 or so more than we have today. You don't start ripping up the way that our criminal justice system works or letting sick people and thieves off early when you can fix a basic administrative failure in the system.
Well, it sounds like that's an area of the Leveson report that you would agree with.
I do.
Then. And obviously we haven't seen what the government plans to do to enact or not parts of this report, which we should point to. But just to pick you up on you suggesting that people are going to get out with just 20% of their sentence. I mean, what's in this report? I think what you're trying to pair a number of things together from, but on this report is saying that if you plead guilty at the earliest possible stage, the discount you should be open to on your would-be sentence should increase from 33%, which it is currently as per your government, to 40%. That's a relatively small increase and is what is new in this report.
No, I don't think that's a small increase. Look, I think people are already raging at the idea that you're a criminal, but you plead guilty, you get a third off your sentence today, and now it's being suggested that's increased to 40%. And couple that with the early release scheme and the changes that are being made by the government.
Was 33%, as you left it, after your government, was that too high too?
I think that's high. I think if you ask the average man and woman on the street, people watching your programme today, they would say that that is already a massive discount. So if you go even further to 40%, that's making a mockery of the law. And imagine if your house was broken into and you found that the burglar who'd done that crime, if they went to court and were sentenced, were only actually going to serve 20% of the sentence because they pled guilty early and the government had made these changes to the way our system works. I think you would not consider that to be justice.
I don't think anyone would.
I come to this from a very simple principle.
That is
if you commit a serious crime,
it's not come from anything that we're talking about today,
jail.
though. And it's interesting that you're saying that the 33% release, which was something that your government left, was too much. And
I think it's high. People at the moment think that people are not serving proper sentences and they're being released early from prison, and that is making all of us less safe. I mean, you saw the other day. Just remember, the MI5, the National Crime Agency, the head of the Metropolitan Police, in an unprecedented intervention, came together and said that the measures the government were already proposing as part of the David Gauke review were going to make us less safe. I think that they are like giving a get-out-of-jail-free card to criminals. If you couple all of that with this, then I think people are going to look, the criminal justice system is just broken. You know, this is not justice for victims of crime in our country.
And to be clear, obviously, the government now has to digest this report and introduce its legislation in relation to it later this year. Also, you know, you mentioned more court sitting hours. Let's move on to the next topic. That's something I think a lot of people can understand, but it comes at a cost. You have to pay people more. And we saw yesterday a big report from the OBR, and it sort of highlighted not just the short-term issues in the government finances, but the long-term problems. One area that's got a lot of focus is the state pension and how expensive it is. On reflection, was the triple lock something that was a mistake to commit to?
Well, we are committed to the triple lock, and we have no plans to change that. Where I think
it's very expensive.
Where I think we should be looking at is welfare reform and net zero. And those are other areas that the OBR rightly alighted on yesterday in their very concerning report. They said, frankly, that the cost of net zero is immense. You're talking about £800 billion to manage the transition to net zero. We cannot afford the kind of net zero zealotry that you're currently seeing from Ed Miliband. That's making people poorer, it's harming our public finances, and it's further deindustrialising our country. So just as Kemi Badenoch said in a speech she made a few months ago, I think that we should be taking a much more pragmatic and sensible approach to that decarbonisation and ensuring that we actually do this in a way that is affordable. There's no prizes for being the first country in the world to decarbonise. It is unilateral economic disarmament. And on welfare, we've got to ensure that we bring down the benefits bill. It's ballooning at the moment. And what we saw last week in Parliament is that Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer have now lost control of their backbenches. There's no realistic prospect that they're going to do sensible reforms to the benefits bill. It's just going to keep rising and rising and rising year in, year out. And what I'm very worried about is that we're going to find ourselves in a financial crisis where the bond markets say we've no confidence in Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer. They have no plan to cut government spending. They've no proper economic growth strategy. And they cannot control their backbench to the point they can't even deliver the basic measures in a budget. Therefore, we are not going to keep lending money at the rate that we have in the recent past to this country. And that is going to be a really serious crisis for our economy.
Yeah, no one wants a repeat of the bond market crisis that of course, happened in the latter years of the Conservative government.
Yeah, but just remember, gilt yields today are higher than they were after Liz Truss's mini-budget. And Rachel Reeves herself at that point...
all sorts of different
Rachel
policies.
Reeves herself at that point said that Liz Truss had crashed the economy. So by Rachel Reeves' own metric, she's crashed the economy.
It's a wild leap to claim that. We could dive into bond yields in length if you really want to, but I don't think it'll give us much benefit. Just want to pick you up on this welfare thing, because I think this is really important. There's lots of areas that people can argue, rightly or wrongly, you could address to try and cut the welfare bill if that's your aim. The state pension is nearly 50% of the welfare budget. It costs £125 billion a year. It's 5% of GDP. So we can argue for political reasons, oh, we would do this one or we would do that one. But all of the numbers, no matter, all of these small levers, save £1 billion here, save a little bit here. But you argue to cut the welfare bill, but then politically continue to say, well, we'll keep the triple lock, we're not changing anything. You can only make changes around the edges on the welfare bill unless you in some way address the state pension. I mean, the other question I put it to the government this morning is, should it be, like the winter fuel bonus payment, should it be means tested?
No, that's not our policy. And look, I am the Shadow Justice Secretary. It's ultimately a decision for our leader, Kemi Badenoch, and the Shadow Chancellor to make policy on our pensions plans in the future. But we've no plan to change that today. And there is a moral case for ensuring that people have dignity and respect in old age. But I disagree with you when you say that we cannot find big savings elsewhere in the welfare budget. Of course we can. We've got 8 or 9 million people in our country who are economically inactive. We've far too many people on benefits today. I want to help those people back into the workplace, both because it's important for our public finances to set the country up on a sustainable footing for the future, but also because it's the moral thing to do. It's not right to see, particularly young people, out of work, sat at home in their their childhood bedrooms, waiting for their lives to begin, particularly people who are concerned about their mental health. We've got to help those people and get them back into the workplace. That is what the focus should be on. Labour were just tinkering around the edges, proposing some very modest reforms that weren't even going to cut the benefits bill. They were just going to stop it rising as fast as it was going to. It looks like they're not going to be able to do any of those things now. And I'm also very surprised to see, frankly, Reform getting into bed with Keir Starmer on that. I understand that Keir Starmer might do this, but I was very surprised to see Nigel Farage doing it as well, saying that he would scrap the 2-child benefits cap so that parents who have 3, 4, 5 kids will get thousands of pounds extra in benefits for that. I don't think that's right. We should be backing people who want to live within their means and make responsible decisions in life.